Life and faith, the two are intimately connected. For more than 2 decades, Life and Faith Television has painted pictures and told stories of faith journeys here in southwestern Ontario. Join us now as we continue the tradition. We explore the diversity in our lives of faith and the faith of our lives.
Good morning and welcome to Life and Faith. Today's show takes us back to St. Paul's Cathedral for the ordination of a deacon, a rather special deacon. Then to Lambeth United, where Matthew Penny chats with a United Church minister facing the modern day challenges and changes of having a 3-point charge. Lastly on the show today, we join in on a celebration of Black history at Christ Church in London. Using word, song and dance, a very meaningful service was shared by all. Working in a 3-point parish is always a challenge. Working in a parish which finds itself in the midst of change increases the challenge. Diane McPherson is the minister of the Dunwich Pastoral Charge, which is located southwest of London in Elgin Presbytery. Over the past few years, the Pastoral Charge has undergone some real changes, and Diane sat down with Matthew Penny to talk about the process and how well the changes have been accepted.
I want to just ask you, right off the bat, you've been in what was the Dunwich, or what was it when you got there?
It was the Dunwich Pastoral Charge.
And what was it made up of? Churches, people?
Chalmers United Church, which is in Cowell, which is basically at Crossroads. St. John's United Church in Dutton, which is 1,200 people. And Wallestown United in Wallestown, which is maybe 200 people. So
and this is the population of the town, not the population of the church.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Well, I say there's really powerful churches out there in Dutton. But that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, how many years have you been there?
10.
10 years?
10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where does time go?
Yeah, my first 7 years were as a student, right, when I was doing my MDiv. And then 2008 was my settlement, ordination, and I was settled.
Lucky you. And
yeah, for a number of wise reasons.
But it's been a good relationship, and it's ongoing.
Yeah.
But things change. The rural situation in the United Church of Canada, as with any mainline denominations, is not the same as it was even 10 years ago.
That's right.
And your churches have just gone through a, what's the word? An amalgamation, I guess. What did you do?
Well, it was actually, was a 5-year journey, and it literally started in May of 2006 when someone got up at the official board meeting, which is all 3 churches meeting quarterly, and said, what about joining together for worship in the winter months to save heating costs?
Makes sense.
So, we did a series of, the session met, and, we met with the congregation, and 2 of the 3 churches decided, sure, let's do it for January, February, and March.
Okay. And
a trial, that was all it was going to be.
No holds barred,
no plans,
obligations.
No plans beyond that. And we hadn't got to the end of January, and people were saying, do we have to stop? Because it was so powerful. People were together, when you had 20 in one church and maybe 30 in the other, and put them together, there's a mass of people. There's energy to it.
Well, those people would probably know each other anyway.
Oh yeah, because they all, well not all, but a lot of them are been there for generations.
Right.
We did that for 2 years, and in all of it we always went back to the people and asked for feedback. And then the 3rd church began to do some of their own visioning, and then they decided to come in. So this is now, we're almost through the 3rd year when all 3 worship together. And so instead of having 3 services at 9, 10, 15, 11:30, we had 1 service at 10 o'clock. And we rotated.
For,
three
years you've been together?
2 years with the 2 churches.
Right.
Now we're almost through the 3rd year of all 3. And we came up with a rotation of services more or less month about in each building. So we're still using all 3 buildings.
Okay, I wanted to know that.
Yeah. And really positive, because right from the start, when the first 2 joined and then the 3rd, if you came in as a visitor or a guest minister, you would not have known it was 3 congregations worshiping. So we ended up, this task force came up with recommendations that were passed by the official board and then by congregational meetings. And they did an amazing job at, again, letting people know to the best that you could. Every week there was a handout if there was a meeting. We mailed out a huge packet to people before the congregational meetings saying, you know, here's the agenda for the meeting, here's the recommendations, here's 6 pages of questions we think you might want to know the answer to after you've read that. Here's even a draft of what the ballot's going to look like. And then we said to people, and by the way, here's what we have for your membership, because only members can vote. Nobody had ever gone to Joe Brown in the pew and said, we have you down as a member, is that right? Right? Like churches, we're good at keeping those records in-house, but we don't really go to the people and say, are our records correct? As in, if you became a member 40 years ago and somebody didn't write it down,
then you're not a member technically.
Well, you know that. So we did some house cleaning. That was kind of interesting too. But in the final recommendation, it wasn't until the official board meeting that somebody actually said how much you're going to save. And so we went through and came up with a spreadsheet. So from the year 2000 to 2010, operational costs, anything that you had to spend to keep the individual church open, maintenance, hydro, water, a new roof, put a water line in, a janitor. For those 11 years, for the 3 churches, the operational costs were just over $500,000.
Probably surprised a few people.
Yeah, I think that was another thing. It was like, really? I mean,
we spent that much?
Yeah, when you divide it by 3 churches in 11 years, it's not that much, but when you see it in a cumulative figure, it's like, so that was another thing I think people said, as well as knowing that the buildings were aging. One had no ramp, no lift, accessibility was an issue.
But it's an old building.
Yeah.
So I hear no regrets.
No, and it's really been, somebody once said, as we talked about a journey, and God was in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Oh, what a nice metaphor.
Yeah. And I think people felt that. It was just, and I guess in any process there's always somebody who thinks it's maybe gone too fast, but by and large, yeah, it was because it was a process, one step at a time, with nobody feeling threatened that amalgamation. You know, if you'd started out saying, well, let's try this because maybe we'll amalgamate someday, whole different process.
Well, other churches, I think, have done the same thing where they worship together and discover that they are one family, can be a family together, and just they don't need 2 buildings now.
And I think versus some other churches now who have hit the wall of, you know, they run out of money or, you know, people or whatever it is, and then start looking around with who can we join with. That's a whole different way of coming at it.
You came at it without having to be in a crisis.
That's right, yeah.
The churches were going along, things were happening, and it was an evolution of your relationship one to another.
Yeah. And like I say, they had a lot of commonalities that you know, grew up in the same neighborhoods. A lot of them, you know, go to the same grocery store. They all mourn the loss of the Dutton Highland games, you know, you know, the things that disappeared already in the community. So those things certainly were part of it.
Yep.
You know, they weren't just people from separate congregations coming together to worship.
And now you have one big happy family.
Well, yeah.
And that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and we're excited. And this move we're going to use the Dutton Church because it's the largest.
Right.
It has a chairlift, and it's in the town.
It's in the city. Yeah.
It's in the where the population is. But clearly, our recommendation said, this is just the next step, and we will not spend any money on this building unless it's absolutely necessary until we figure out what the next step is. Whether that is that we're permanently in this building, or, you know, Dutton doesn't have a lot of other choices. It's not like we have, you know, theaters that you could use, you know, but, you know, is there a rental or maybe we need to build a community church?
Yeah, there's all kinds of chances. And you will have the money from the sale of the other buildings, which can be seed for that as the Presbytery sees fit, and they should.
Yeah.
So there's a chance for some creative ministry and for a new beginning, which will be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of the people, the St. John's building is the one that's left, and some of the people that were part of that congregation were like, we don't really want to be here either. But we got to we got to get out of 2 aging buildings till we figure out where we're going to go next.
It'd be nice to have a little time of reflection and healing, as it were, over the grief process of closing before you bite off another big chunk of something to do.
Other than we might get some comfortable seating. Well, I never sit in the pews, but they tell me that the pews are...
I've been in that church. They are uncomfortable. Believe me. Sat through a couple of Presbytery meetings there.
But what we've said, if we buy, we don't want to put any money into the building for at least 2 years, if we don't, unless we have to, if the furnace goes or whatever.
Yes, of course.
Except for, you know, if we wanted to do some AV equipment or comfortable seating, something that could be taken to another building.
Yeah, sometimes it's much cheaper to build a new building than to renovate an old one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But you may find. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. It
Thank
sounds
you.
like fun. Sometime, a little ways down the road, we're going to have you back, I hope, so we can find out how you're doing.
Oh, good. That's great.
So I
Thank
wish you and the Dunwich United Church the very best of luck.
Thank you, Matthew.